Are you ready to find out how to successfully manage your client expectations, whether you are a virtual assistant or a freelancer? In this video, I'm going to walk you through how to be able to successfully start working with your client, whether you've just gone through the onboarding process with them or that you've been working with them for a while and things doesn't feel like they're going to click. This is going to be a little bit of troubleshooting, so depending on what solution works for you. Hopefully you guys are watching the whole video because I'm going to walk you through different scenarios and possible fixes basically on how you're going to be able to tackle them. And this is coming from someone who has been running a virtual assistant agency within the last 5 years and have come across different types of assistants as well as different types of clients. Now the first one is setting clear communication rules. Now this could be boundaries that you've put in. So for example, if you have a client who will message you on your 3 a.m. even though you've already told them that your shift ends at like 12 a.m. or that you have a specific time that you work with them, it might be time to set those rules of like, hey, these are my work hours. If you message me beyond that, I'll get back to you within 24 to 48 hours, or we're going to have to renegotiate basically what my work times are so I can match when you're messaging me. And this is something that is okay for you to set, because sometimes you might have started working with this client where they were working very specifically on one time zone, for example, and they've switched. So the demands have switched basically as well. So you want to make sure that you renegotiate and rediscuss what are those times for you to be online or to work, so then they can match that with you. This could also be how often you guys are going to talk. You have a daily sync. So for example, for me and my assistant, we still have a daily sync 2 years later, just because sometimes things can change so fast in the day that if we don't sync as often as we do currently right now, things might get forgotten or falling through the cracks, whatever that looks like. So daily syncs, weekly syncs, monthly syncs, and also what is the best way for them to communicate with you and what's the best way for you to communicate with them. So for example, for me, I prefer really long chats or emails over video or voice. It's kind of how I work. I've been trying to improve that so I can be more adaptable, but that's for me. And my assistant knows that. She understands that that's how I prefer to receive information. And then for her, it's a little bit of a mix of both, where she would love a tutorial where I walk her through how to do something. And sometimes just because she's been with me for the last 2 years, I can just send her a message, a quick like, hey, this is the outcome I'm looking for, and she'll be able to just understand it. Now again, this could change with time, with the task or the project that you're working on, but as long as you're thinking of this way of like, hey, maybe communication is one of the first things that we have to establish, whether that's the boundary, how you communicate, when you communicate, and where. These are different basically checkpoints they can look at when it comes to communicating with your client. Next is make sure that you outline what you'll deliver. And this isn't just with the onboarding. This could be for new tasks, new projects, new outcomes that you're working on. Is you want to outline or discuss with them at least what are the things that they are expecting and actually putting it down, writing in bullet point notes. It might be a whole like PDF that you're sending them. The importance of it is you actually have it written down, what they expect from you. So there's no second guessing. There is also more opportunity for you to do a little bit more, a little extra of like going beyond what is asked for, but there is kind of a baseline of what they're hoping to see from you, so then you have that clear back and forth. Too many times I've seen a lot of clients and assistants who work really well break down because of this, because they weren't speaking the same language of what the outcome should look like, what should be delivered, so on and so forth. So make sure that this is clear whenever you're given either a new task or a project or an outcome to work on, is you have an outline of what are essentially either deliverables or what are things that they want to see as an output. Next is updating clients regularly. And there's this funny adage basically when you're a virtual assistant that don't get it to the point where the client follows up with you. You should be the one always following up with the client. So what this means is when you're working on a project or a task, don't wait for the next meeting. Don't wait for the next check-in. Just keep your client up to date of projects or the things you're working on, of outcomes, of maybe bottlenecks that you've come through. So then for them, they are kept up to date on what they need to know. And this is also coming back to creating those communication boundaries of what are important pieces of information for them versus like what's something that they will drown out and they would think that is too much information. So it's finding that balance of keeping them up to date so they don't follow up with you, but also setting up what are important things to tell them, to give them a heads up on. So then there's that, again, that clarity, and that there's not a confusion basically on what should be focused on and what should be given. Next is just keep deadlines realistic. Now life happens, other priorities come up. You could be working on a project for the last 3 months, but because this one client, for example, of your client keeps kind of going back around and not giving the right information, you might have to adjust. So just communicate. Again, it is better that you are the one to approach the client rather than the client approaching you. So whenever it comes to deadlines, just be someone who does what they say. And if you can foresee that you're not going to be able to match the timeline and the outcome that you're creating, just communicate, just talk to them about it. This is about managing their expectations so they don't have this idea of you of like, hey, Leanne said that she was gonna get this done by Thursday. It's already Wednesday. I haven't heard anything. I wonder how it is. So you wanna be the one proactively communicating with them, telling them like, hey, I need this much time, or like, hey, actually, I'm gonna be able to finish this really early because I was able to do X, Y, and Z. Whatever that looks like, is keeping those managed. Next, and this is key, is ask for feedback often. And this is really key when you have different cultures, when you have different communication styles, is to ask for feedback on what are the things that they think you did really well and what are things that they still want to see some improvement. And this might be a little difficult or a little uncomfortable to receive, but to be honest, you want to, again, align how they see things with how you see things. Because it could be that for you, you're doing amazing, you're doing perfect, you're being given bits and pieces of feedback that you're doing really well, but in reality, from the client's point of view, it could be something completely different. So it's really important that you set that with the client, where you ask for feedback regularly, whether that is on a weekly capacity, monthly, every time you finish an outcome or a project. Basically a big one is you ask for feedback so you can redirect yourself and be able to be set on the right path for the next time. Next is explain what's possible. So this is something that a lot of the time a client might get an idea from someone else by reading a book, by watching a podcast, a YouTube video, or by networking with someone, and they might have this really big idea of like, hey, I really want to get this done. It is up to you to kind of set what is actually possible, what can actually get done based on what it is that they want to see or to have as an outcome. So this could be researching like, hey, these are the experts that I found who can help us with this, or hey, here's a template that I found, or a template that I sourced from the internet on how we can get started, or hey, I don't think this is possible at all, but I think we can do it if we do A, B, and C. So it is kind of grabbing back, and this is very common with entrepreneurs, myself included, where we have this big thing that we want to get done, but in reality it has so many steps before we can actually get there. And for you as a virtual assistant, you can call them out on it. You can set the expectation of like, hey, I think that we have to do X, Y, and Z first before we can achieve this, or using your resources, asking other virtual assistants, asking Reddit basically on how you can break down a project or outcome to make it come true. You can also, of course, use AI, but the point of this exercise essentially is to get to the point where you are a person who can break things down, break down a vision into something that's more actionable. Next is head off problems early. And what that means is starting to anticipate if you can foresee a bottleneck, is to not always just kind of, and it's so easy to get there, and I've done it myself, where we're kind of just grinding. It's important to zoom out once in a while so you can foresee, oh, yeah, I need that resource, I need that tool, I need this knowledge, I need this mastery, whatever that looks like. It's important that for yourself is you zoom out from time to time so you can start anticipating if there's going to be a bottleneck or a problem so you can address them right away. You're not waiting until you actually hit that bottleneck. You're actually already kind of watching out for it, finding solutions so you can either serve away from it or problem solve through it. And lastly, always stay professional. And this is easier said than done, especially if you're working with your client on a very personal capacity, you've known them for years, but it's still important to have that sense of like, hey, how I show up, the output that I create says a lot about me. So it's important to keep that professionalism of knowing when to show up and how to show up for your client. It's also knowing how to take care of yourself and knowing how to call a timeout on yourself. Like, hey, I think I need a little bit of a break, or hey, I will get this done because I want to be able to take, a week off next week. Whatever that looks like, it's maintaining that professionalism, and a little bit of that aura basically of who you are and how you want to show up for your client, so you can keep kind of managing their expectations of like, hey, this person is my second brain and they get so much done and I do want to take care of them best as well. So it's kind of a really good back and forth of working with your client in the best way and having them take care of you. Now, of course, if you enjoy this video, make sure to hit the thumbs up button right there. Comment below any questions you might have when it comes to managing your client's expectations. And if you still haven't yet, make sure to hit the subscribe button right there so you don't miss any of my videos every Sunday and Thursday on how to work from home and how to have a business from home, which you guys can check out those two playlists right here and the latest video right here. Hope you guys have an amazing day, and remember that small steps matters, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!